On This Week in Enterprise Tech, 5G is rolling out kind of slow, and the FCC has plans to help, but they might be ticking off some cities. And when it comes to software, most people look at features and quality assurances. However, nowadays, Curtis thinks you should be adding in their security as well. Plus, the IT world's been turned upside down by the pandemic. We have a new distributed workforce, and we have Raman Venkatraman. He's the Vice President and Global Head HiTech from TCS, and he's going to take us through how the IT world's changed during this period and just what organizations are doing to evolve. We shouldn't miss it. It's Wyatt on the set. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you from LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure, even when they're working remotely. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twyat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 407, recorded August 21st, 2020, Land of the Fee. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Barracuda. Did you know that 91% of all cyber attacks start with an email? To uncover the threats hiding in your Office 365 account, get a secure and free email threat scan at barracuda.com/enterprise. And by LastPass. Allow your remote workforce the ability to do their best work without jumping through hoops. Ensure your business's security with LastPass. Visit lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. And by Salesforce Service Cloud. Salesforce Service Cloud is the world's #1 customer service platform that empowers organizations to deliver service from anywhere, from home, in the office, or in the field. Go to bit.ly/Salesforce for service to find out more. Welcome to This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that's dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I am your host, Lou MARESCA, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise. But I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own geek in paradise. He's the packing mogul down there in the great state of Hawaii, Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, have you finally succumbed to the packing?
Well, not quite. Just a little bit. I'm now to the point where I'm taking apart the baker's racks and shrink wrapping them and getting them ready to bring home to ship. Again, my background comes compliments of the Hawaii Drone Club. Well, Honolulu, actually. That is actually going around by Blowhole. It's a really nice deep water, so it's really, really deep dark blue. It's a gorgeous area and good fishing.
Ooh, I wish I could be there to fish. I'm sorry that you're leaving. One of these days I wanted to get down there and do something like that. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Well, folks, speaking of experts, he's our favorite security and enterprise journalist and the senior editor over there at Dark Rating, Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, how's things going down in the great state of Hawaii? I mean, great state of Florida. I'm having problems with states these days.
Well, here in Florida, we're doing fine. We've got it's the middle of the hurricane season, so there are a couple of storms churning out there, and it looks like we might have 2 hurricanes off to our west by this time next week. But so far, so good, doing well, and staying busy. A lot of stuff going on, coming off of Black Hat and DEF CON. We've got some other conferences that are happening over the next couple of weeks, getting ready for things like Interop, which will be happening in a month or so, and all kinds of fascinating goings on in the security world. So I'm glad to take a deep breath and be here to think deep thoughts with the gang here at Twyat.
We're always glad to have you, for sure. Speaking of busy, though, it's definitely been a very busy week in the enterprise, so we should definitely get started. Now, we've talked a lot about 5G rolling out, but it's rolling out kind of slow, and the FCC plans to try to help make that better, but it might have ticked off some cities. And so courts are coming back with some decisions based off of some of the lawsuits that are out there. And we'll talk about what that means. Now, when it comes to software, most look to features and quality assurances. But nowadays, Curtis thinks you should be asking yourself, how secure is it as well? Looking forward to that discussion. And the IT world has been turned upside down by the pandemic and our new digital distributed workforce. And we have Raman Venkatraman he's the Vice President and Global Head of HiTech from TCS. And he's going to take us through the IT world and how it's changed during this period and just what organizations are doing to evolve. But before we get to all that great and goodness, we have to do this week's Blips. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's Blips. Well, the pandemic has brought us the best out of botnets. That's right. Botnets are still around, and some of them are flying deep under the radar. In fact, one of them has been running undetected since January. Now, what's the target? A very sophisticated botnet campaign is targeting government offices, educational institutions, medical centers, banks, and numerous telecom companies. Dubbed FritzFrog by security researchers at Guidecore Limited, reported the peer-to-peer botnet is believed to be actively breaching SSH servers since January. Now, the botnet executes a worm malware written in the Go language and is packaged to be modular or self-contained, in fact, even multi-threaded, and without any file dependencies. So they're leaving no trace on the infected machine's disk. Now, the botnet attempted to brute force and propagate on tens of millions of IP addresses of its targets. Now, you might be asking, well, how many devices did it actually infect? Well, researchers found that the botnet has infected more than 500 servers, including well-known universities in the U.S. and Europe, along with a railway company. The highest number of infections in countries found were actually China, South Korea, and the U.S. Now, the secret ingredients to FritzFrog is that it takes advantage of the fact that many network security solutions enforce traffic only by the port and protocol. Now, can there be a defense to such a botnet? Well, of course. To overcome this stealthy technique, process-based segmentation rules can easily prevent such a threat. Now, if you remember, bots used to be simple, useful tools, but now they're emulating users to target large corporations. Now is definitely a good time to maybe have AI and bots go up against each other.
Next-gen supply chain attacks are surging by 430%. It used to be that attackers simply preyed on existing vulnerabilities within well-used open-source components with the understanding that they could victimize the many organizations relying on outdated dependencies. Attackers are now more frequently getting proactive by infiltrating open-source projects to seed them with compromised components that they can pounce on once they're downloaded and used by unsuspecting organizations. According to the 2020 State of the Software Supply Chain report just released by Sonatype, these so-called next-generation supply chain attacks are surging markedly, up 430% in the last year. Attackers are leveraging the very nature of open-source software development against itself with these next-gen supply chain attacks. Open source projects rely on contributions from volunteers, and these projects themselves frequently incorporate hundreds or even thousands of dependencies from other projects. The ethos of open source projects is one that relies on shared trust, all of which creates a fertile environment whereby bad actors can prey upon good people with surprising ease. The most recent sophisticated example of a next-gen software supply chain attack was discovered lurking on GitHub in May. Researchers found a piece of malware called Octopus Scanner that targeted GitHub users involved in developing NetBeans projects. The software was designed to serve up backdoored code into NetBeans components on GitHub repositories without the legitimate repository owners even realizing it. Experts warn that even as the number of next-gen attacks rise, organizations still need to keep improving their stance against legacy attacks. The report's research shows new open source vulnerabilities are exploited in the wild within 3 days of public exposure, and some 86% of organizations are still open to these exploits within that window.
Apparently, China's days as the world's factory are done, according to an iPhone assembler, and they're blaming the Trump trade wars. Well, the story goes, Apple has several key marketing phases that pretty much tell all techies and they know by heart, such as Think Different, and there's an app for that. But its most ubiquitous one may soon start to change. Designed by Apple in California, assembled in China. Young Liu, chairman of the worldwide device assembler Han High Precision Industry, also known as Foxconn, said his company plans to begin splitting its supply chains between China and the U.S. And the reason, he said, is President Donald Trump's trade war with China. No matter if it's India, Southeast Asia, or the Americas, there will be manufacturing ecosystems in each, Liu told investors on a conference call reported by Bloomberg last Wednesday. He added that China will still play a key role in his company's manufacturing effort, but the country's days as the world's factory are done. The whole situation sounds like it's straight from the pages of a Clancy novel, with companies abandoning Chinese manufacturing in favor of a more geographically diversified approach in order to avoid massive shutdowns like the Wuhan outbreak and the presidential trade wars. My opinion has been that with the inertia broken, quite a few other countries will be picking up the slack, as the old saying goes. Perhaps it's best to not have all our eggs in one basket.
Now, 2020 is the year we want to forget pretty soon, but unfortunately, it's still the year for cyber attacks. And this week has been no exception. And the University of Utah revealed this week that it paid a ransom gang $457,059 to avoid having hackers leak student information online. Now, I guess that is one way for universities to take care of their students. Now, the incident is the latest in a long string of ransomware attacks where criminal groups steal sensitive files from the hacked companies before encrypting their files, and in case victims refuse to pay, threaten to release the stolen documents as a second extortion scheme. Backup plan there. Now, in the university's statement, they were able to dodge a significant ransomware incident, and that hackers managed to encrypt only 0.2% of the data stored on their servers. Now, we always mention you should always back up to ensure ransomware has a minimal effect on your business and your workflows. However, that's only when the data hasn't been exfiltrated and it's not sensitive. Now, the university said its staff restored from backups. However, the ransomware gang threatened to release student-related data online, making university management rethink their approach towards not paying the attackers. To ensure the data was not leaked, after careful consideration, the university decided to work with its cyber insurance provider to pay a fee to the ransomware attacker to actually fix the problem. Now, this story provides that backup isn't the only defense you will need in the ransomware defense game. It might be time to start looking into some advanced threat protection and data loss tools as well.
Industrial control system vulnerability reports rapidly rise. In the first half of 2020, there were 10.3% more industrial control system, or ICS, vulnerabilities reported in the National Vulnerability Database, and an increase of 32.4% of ICS CERT advisories for vulnerabilities compared with 1 year earlier. More than 75% of the ICS flaws reported this year were rated high or critical, according to a report from ICS security firm Clarity. More than 70% of ICS flaws reported in the first half of 2020 are remotely exploitable. 365 ICS flaws landed in the NVD, and 139 advisories came in via ICS CERT. The ICS flaws exposed this year were found in products used in critical infrastructure. The report shows that of the 385 flaws included in the security advisory, 236 affected the energy sector, 197 affected critical manufacturing, and 171 affected water and wastewater. That's an increase of 58.9% for energy, 87.3% for critical manufacturing, and a whopping 122% for water and wastewater over the same period in 2019. For industrial organizations, it's all about awareness of their ICS's security holes and ensuring that they are sitting securely on the network, not inadvertently exposed to the public internet. You know, patching isn't always the solution for IoT organizations, so it's a matter of mapping out the risk to your network.
On a clear January afternoon in 2010, a fault rupture 6.2 miles beneath the Earth's surface sent shockwaves rippling towards the southwestern corner of the island of Hispaniola. In the 30 seconds that the magnitude 7 trembler shook Haiti, and in the dozens of aftershocks that followed, more than 1.3 million people were displaced and over 300,000 people lost their lives. On a continent away, Jake Gillanders, a captain in Paulsboro Fire Department in Washington State, watched the news unfold. His wife was pregnant with their daughter at the time, so he waited until after the child was born 6 weeks later before packing his bags and paying his own way to Haiti to help as a medical volunteer. Despite 10 years of experience as a paramedic and firefighter, he wasn't prepared for the destruction he found. Roads were impassable and entire towns were reduced to dust. Quote, "We were totally overwhelmed by the amount of assistance required," Gillanders said. "We had no reliable transportation and very limited satellite communications." This kind of situation is facing more and more first responders around the world, and the world of makers seem to be rising to the occasion. My first recollection were ambulance motorcycles in Italy, drones in Africa rushing blood and medications to remote areas, and we're just going to see more and more dedicated responders cobbling together novel approaches to delivering help in a timely manner. My hat is off to them and hope that the industry releases its grips on only using gas guzzler monster ambulances that get stuck in the slightest traffic jams and move to nimbler new approaches. I want to also do a shout out to folks like our co-host Heather Mo Williams, who helps out with the ITDRC to provide communications during disasters, and to organizations like them rising to help our fellow global citizens.
Now, back in 2016, you probably remember that Uber had a data breach when hackers stole the personal information of about 25 million customers and drivers. Now, instead of reporting the stolen data as required by law, Uber paid the hackers $100,000 to keep quiet. Now, that was late in 2016, and it wasn't until November 2017 that the Uber CEO revealed the hackers and the hack and the downloaded names, email addresses, and mobile phone numbers of 57 million Uber users worldwide. Now, the figure actually included 600,000 of the company's drivers whose names and driver's licenses were also at risk. The data breach prompted scrutiny from a lot of regulators in the United States and other countries, including United Kingdom, Australia, Italy, and the Philippines. And in September 2018, Uber agreed to pay $148 million to settle an investigation into the 2016 data breach the company has been accused of intentionally concealing. As part of the settlement, Uber agreed to develop and implement a corporate integrity program for employees to report unethical behavior. Now, it's also decided to adopt model data breach notification and data security patches and hire an independent third party to assess its data security practices. But Uber thought that might have ended it all. Well, they were wrong. A complaint filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court in San Francisco alleges the Joe Sullivan, who led Uber's security team for more than 2 years until November 2017. And it says he was engaged in a scheme to withhold and conceal both the hack and the amount of data that was exposed from the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. The charges are not limited to just obstruction of justice either. Sullivan is currently the chief security officer of the internet infrastructure company Cloudflare. This is new information, just might have Cloudflare rethinking their trust in their security officer. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, the bites. But before we get to the bites, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Barracuda. Now, you may have heard of advanced threat protection, especially as part of the current climate. In fact, we just mentioned it. It's something you really want to have as an organization. Well, Barracuda is that solution. They provide cloud-enabled, enterprise-grade security solutions that protect your email, your networks, data, and applications. Think about it. Suddenly, you have dozens, hundreds, or maybe even thousands of employees working remotely, each one of them getting tons of emails every day. Email is a classic technology that makes your users vulnerable. 91% of all cyber attacks start in email. Spear phishing, ransomware, account takeover, conversation hijacking. Multiply that by how many employees you have times how many emails. One click on the wrong email can cost you money, can customers, maybe even reputation. Think about that. The Barracuda researchers have been seen a steady increase in the number of coronavirus-related spear phishing attacks since January, and they have observed a recent spike of almost 667% in this type of attack since the end of February. Now, get the protection you need for your company with Barracuda Total Email Protection. It includes a lot of stuff here. Listen to all this. All-in-one email security, backup, and archiving. Backup is a key one. AI-based protection from spear phishing, account takeover, and business email compromise, plus an automated incident response that gives you options to quickly and efficiently address attacks when they happen. And security awareness training. That's also important for your users to educate your workforce so your employees can be the first line of defense against attacks. Now, we've covered this a couple times in Twice, but in the current climate, the bad guys are targeting people using social engineering techniques. They impersonate organizations like the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention to trick users into opening a malicious email, tricking them into looking at what the data is, maybe even clicking on those links, and users access those malicious coded sites, and that's it. Now it's time to take back control of your security. Ensure the safety and security of your business with Barracuda. To uncover the threats hiding in your inbox, get a secure, free email threat scan of your Office 365 account, risk-free, at barracuda.com/enterprise. That is barracuda.com/enterprise. Barracuda, your journey secured. And we thank Barracuda for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, now time for the bites. Now, we all know that the 5G infrastructure updates in the U.S. have been kind of slow. Now, the FCC is kind of executed on plans to assist telecoms in expanding their coverage. However, their plans actually are not going so well. Think about that for a second of how much coverage has been done so far. Now, one of their most recent plans was that FCC voted to preempt cities and towns in September 2018, saying the move would prevent local governments from charging wireless carriers about $2 billion worth of fees over 5 years related to wireless equipment deployment, such as small cells in the cities. Now, if we do some simple math, that's only less than 1% of the estimated $275 billion that the FCC said carriers would have to spend to deploy 5G cells throughout the United States. Now, as a response, cities were kind of ticked off. So they sued FCC, but a ruling issued by the U.S. Court of Appeals from the Ninth Circuit this week actually went mostly in FCC's favor, unfortunately. Now, although it wasn't a complete victory for the FCC, judges actually overturned a portion of the ruling that limited the kinds of aesthetic requirements cities and towns can impose on the carrier deployments. Maybe they can force the cells to look like trees now or something. Now, they actually upheld a $500 fee limit, which is $100 per cell. As the FCC order said, it covers a single upfront application that includes up to 5 small wireless facilities and $100 for each additional small cell. All right, I want to bring my co-host in because obviously, it seems like the FCC is trying here. Now, Chee, first and foremost, was the FCC move to limit the fees with good intentions, or is it just a form of good faith for the telecoms? What do you think? It
actually depends on which side of the coin you're looking at. Now, keep in mind, one of the things every building owner, especially if you have a reasonably tall building, looks at cell sites as the golden fleece. They can charge some very, very good fee rentals on a monthly basis for very little. Normally a rooftop is just a rooftop. You can't use it for anything else. But now all of a sudden it's a new source of revenue. Now, a lot of municipalities were looking at it as a golden goose. They wanted to be able to go and charge, even though, quote, they didn't own those poles. They were going to try and use these fees to go and, pluck the goose. They wanted monthly recurring charges on these cell providers because they were up against the wall. Microcells for 5G requires a lot more of them because the signals are higher frequency. They don't propagate as well. You need to start sticking them on the side of buildings, on poles and things like that. And municipalities really, really wanted that new revenue stream. Now, if you flip the coin around, this is good because some of the municipalities were actually looking at this revenue stream as a way to get a lot of money. And the rental fees, the licensing fees they were going to charge were actually quite high, especially considering how many microcells the carriers were going to have to put in. I don't agree with either side. There needs to be a middle ground. 5G, for it to work, you need a lot of cells. And I think the municipalities ought to take a little harder look at what some of the cable carriers and people are doing for municipal Wi-Fi. Maybe follow those. Spectrum in Hawaii, and actually a lot of major cities, are actually putting ruckus Wi-Fi access points hanging from the cables. And the fees that Honolulu is charging them are actually more along the lines of, okay, we're charging you already for the cables you're putting up. We're charging already for the pole attachments. We're going to add that in. Now, one of the big key points to this legislation are shot clocks. And the whole idea is, how long do you have to wait, the carrier that is, before you can say, okay, nobody commented, we're going to attach. So the FCC is basically saying we control shot clocks, not the municipalities, not the local public utilities commissions. And that's what's pissing off these big cities. So
very interesting.
Both ways.
Yeah. I like that. Well, I want to see if I can get Curtis to decide on one of the ways, because my ultimate question here is, by these changes, do you think it will speed up deployments here? What do you think, Curtis?
I think the basic answer to that question is no. And some of the carriers have already said as much. They've said essentially that they're moving as fast as they can. You know, they are moving as fast as the coming together of their supply of microcells and their supply of human capital will allow them to. And so the fee is neither here nor there when it comes to their speed. You know, I think one of the things that the municipalities were looking at is their history with the cable companies and some of the other utilities where, for example, with the cable companies, they tended to set things like pole fees, various sorts of fees for attachments and running physical infrastructure at a time when the average cable bill was probably $25, and all the cable companies did was supply television programming. Now, of course, the cable companies are providing all kinds of content as well as internet service, and in many cases, telephone, the analog to landline, as well as wireless. And all of that tends to get wrapped up into those legacy fees. So rather than having charged for a limited set of capabilities and ending up feeling as though they undercharged for them in the long run, I think they're trying to get ahead of the game, charge what they see as a more rational fee for the services that could be offered via 5G. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a great discussion about the kind of new applications that 5G could bring. And I think many of these municipalities are looking ahead to those sorts of things when they set their fee structures for pole attachment.
All right, talking about relevant fees here, Chee, I want to throw this last question to you now. The second part was the ability for each city to charge the $500 fee for all these sites. Now, supposedly, the fee may actually go above that if they can actually demonstrate that their actual costs exceed the possible levels. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the cities could find some reason that, oh, wait, there's some additional power draw in this area and we have to pay, more money for that area, so we can charge more? Like, what do you think that means? Is there basically a loophole here for the cities?
Hey, it's all about loopholes. And the reality is $500 per pole attach. That's really high. Think of it this way. The last time I actually got real numbers, the typical buildings in Honolulu was only charging $350 per month per antenna. So with the city saying, oh, we're going to charge $500 per pole attach, that's kind of in the same territory. Now, I got to admit, the cost per pole attachment is kind of high. And what's going to happen is no one in their right mind is going to put a electric meter on that. There's just going to be too many of them. So they're going to do what's called an estimated. And the local power utilities are going to go and say, okay, how much power does it use? Okay, we're going to charge you a flat rate. And so that $500 cap, yeah, it could get more expensive than $500 when you start talking about things like meters. You start talking about having to put in circuit protection and a transformer and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of factors controlling it that you're going to have to deal with that you don't need to deal with when you're doing a cell tower on a building. So
Right.
a $500 cap is I guess a good swag. But there's going to have to be some sort of verbiage in there to allow for what ifs. And that, I think, is going to be a big deal. And sadly, no matter how much it's going to cost, it's all going to get passed to the consumer. So will 5G become economical? Not with those kind of fees coming up. And if the municipalities really want 5G to be out there to try and get to the bridge the digital divide, I think they're going to have to be a little lighter on those fees and give the carriers enough wiggle room so that they can afford to do the digital divide jump.
Right. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if this potentially seeds additional deployment or if it maybe goes the other way. Only time will tell. Well, folks, it does it for that bite. I do want to move into the next bite because, a lot of organizations and people, they choose software based off of a couple things. The features, how useful it is, maybe how many users there are out there, maybe the performance, maybe its compatibility. But what about security? Not a lot of organizations choose for security. Curtis, what's going on there?
Well, one of the slogans in the industry is fail faster. But when it comes to software, shipping failed software isn't actually a good business strategy. You're expected to deliver high quality, secure software, and if you don't, it's going to be tough to realize measurable business benefits. So what do these terms mean, quality and secure, when it comes to software? Does good quality software automatically mean it's secure? And if it's really secure, can it be considered inherently high quality? Are they the same thing, or are they even related? Well, new research and even some legacy thinking says that it's complicated. But for CISOs and others responsible for ensuring security across software development, untangling a handful of questions is considered crucial. First, you have to define things before you can measurement. It's said you can't manage what you can't measure. You can't measure what you can't define. Quality software, well, that will execute according to intended design and purpose based on business functionality. Secure software won't put systems or data at risk of unauthorized access. Now, for many people, there's a clear relationship between the two, and one that's highlighted in guidance from the authoritative American Society of Quality, which positions security as a key element of software quality. Why is there any sort of tension between the two? Well, it's all history's fault. Ever since the days of linear waterfall-style development, quality has been the domain of development teams who didn't really have to think about security. That was the security team's job. Meanwhile, security worked separately and ended bolting on solutions that might or might not be the highest quality. Now, whether you call it a quality problem or a security problem, fact is it's a problem. Humans make mistakes, and many teams just don't have the tools or capabilities to enable the creation of error-free code. Add in the constant pressure to move ever faster, and quality issues can quickly turn into security nightmares. Many breaches can be traced back to bugs, the ones that cause software to deviate from its purpose, or underlying quality defects like the failure to properly delineate code from data or sufficiently validate and filter input. Companies create software to fill a customer need, whether that customer is internal or external. That's software's primary business function. So some people say that there are 4 steps towards bringing the two closer together in something that the industry has called DevSecOps. Number 1, take a top-down approach. Security is everyone's job. That's the mindset. That's top-down. Involve security in developer training. For example, conduct post-mortem education, sharing source code repositories, and establishing authentication and encryption libraries that have security's approval. Embed consistent security across development, across the complete software development lifecycle. Monitor issues in a uniform, centralized way to make sure that the detection gaps are closed and everyone can see the full value of risk. Finally, take advantage of automation. Deploying automated testing on every code commit will help you catch vulnerabilities earlier and cut through the noise so developers can prioritize their efforts. Quality must translate into secure products if it's worth anything. And one of the things I want to do now is turn to my co-host Lou, you first. Does any of this resonate with you? Do you think there is an intrinsic relationship between quality code and a secure application?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's interesting because historically, I'm sure a lot of our audience can say, oh yeah, I have a lot of applications and services that I use on my machines or in our servers that not necessarily the most stable, but are the most secure, which is interesting to say the least. But like you said, some of those quality problems can turn into security problems. Like, for instance, if an application over time crashes due to memory issues, well, then there could be an exploit that says, let me figure out a way to exploit the memory issue and crash the application. So, I mean, it definitely can lead to problems over time. But I've actually seen historically that sometimes the best, most secure applications, like you said, are not necessarily the most reliable all the time. And that's because they're always updating or moving forward very quickly. And I think that's the key, is being able to correct those problems and have an avenue to do so, whether it's service-delivered solutions or updates like a lot of modern applications do today, or constantly getting them updated to keep them secure. So that kind of avenue ensures that the reliability problems don't become security problems and that the security side stays secure. And I think that's that's basically the model that we're seeing from a lot of organizations out there, is they're focusing more on making sure their software is secure and that they have that avenue to update and keep them current iteratively.
You know, that's important. The rapid iteration in so many modern development models. Brian, I want to turn to you because you've been involved on the security side for years. And I have to ask, when you were working in security operations, was software quality something that you had your finger on, or was that something that was seen more as the software development team's role while you looked strictly at the security issues?
Well, testing was a lot bigger deal when I was in that world. There's a lot of software that we were not allowed to use because it had not been blessed by the testing agencies. That's one of the things that I haven't been seeing in the private sector. It's like, okay, you guys are just going to order whatever you feel like, and we're going to do it. And we're going to commit a fairly major portion of your corporation to this. That doesn't sound like good planning. So I'm going to get back up on the testing soapbox and say, yeah, the federal government hopes to try and do this all the time. It doesn't always, but it's something that needs to be done. Now, what I am going to point out is just because it's a security company doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. I'm not going to name names, but there is a particular home alarm system that managed to ship with a hard-coded diagnostic password that could bypass and allow anyone to shut down that home alarm system. And that managed to make it through, I don't know how many different layers of QA before it was released and sold many, many thousands of units all across the world. That kind of tells me that even the best laid plans sometimes can be tripped up by someone that forgot. So test, and more test. And the reality is there are many, many corporations that could do better, should do better. They're basically doing things that should have been caught but didn't get caught because the marketing guys pushed the product out too soon. Let's point fingers at marketing right now. There needs to be a better effort. There needs to be products that aren't going out with, a decade-old Linux kernel as the basis for their system. There needs to be people that are going to take the responsibility to look at security as a total package, the whole story. They shouldn't be building on decades-old Linux kernels. They should be using the latest and greatest. They should be applying patches. If it's based on open source, use those open source patches. And I totally agree with Curt in that just because it's secure now doesn't mean it's going to be secure a couple months down the line, because sometimes a patch gets through that has a flaw. We are all human. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of really interesting things. And I think the world in general needs to pay a lot more attention to quality control in their software and to make sure there are checks and balances that can be done by anyone in the QC process. Just like those emergency stop buttons on an assembly line. Everyone needs to take responsibility for it. Everyone needs to be able to stop the production when they find something big. And you just gotta go and bite the bullet, because if you're putting out product that someone's trusting and you break the trust, your company could go down the tubes very, very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Well, my last question, Lou, is coming back to you. We've talked about defining the issue. And when it comes to defining quality, there are some formal systems for doing that, some frameworks. I think of things like the capability maturity model that came out of the work of Bill Curtis and others at Carnegie Mellon. Is that something that you see any value to when you're talking about quality in the context of security? Is that a useful way of defining quality when you need to talk to other groups?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. A lot of these models are foundational. They're ways to use as a guide to really good software, to really secure software. But organizations have to implement these things, and some of them implement it differently than others, because a lot of these processes and models don't define on how you're supposed to meet those needs. And so the organizations basically translate that to whatever they can fit in. Like, for instance, what does that mean? Does it mean that you white box test, black box test, fuzz test, penetration tests? Do you use customer reports? Do you have a feedback loops? What does that mean when it comes to formal processes? And so, there are some examples out there, templates, I guess you could say, that essentially help organizations with these formal processes. But a lot of times they don't always fit every organization. So I definitely think that these formal quality models really do help as a foundation. But again, an organization has to do right by what they think is good for their quality, for their service and their application. A lot of organizations nowadays are starting to use live data from customers, whether it's feedback from the customer themselves or it's getting them to agree to live data streams from their devices, their services, or applications to catch anything wrong with stability problems or issues, so that they can go and correct those things, especially when you have the P95 of those issues. And so, there's lots of ways to handle this, and I really think that some of these maturity models do help with the foundational. But again, focusing on what's working is probably another really good approach for this type of software and services.
Well, I think that having the variety of approaches to fit the variety of business cases is probably the right thing, as long as your business uses one of them. Pick one and use it. Don't just sort of throw code to the wind and see where it falls. Well, Lou, I appreciate your answers. You provide a lot of insight into this for obvious reasons, and there's more insight to come because, hey, we've got a lot more Twiat to come. For that, let's hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Curtis. That's right. We do have a guest to come very soon to drop some knowledge on us. But before we get to that, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's, of course, LastPass. Now think about it a second. Your IT department has a very big job, more devices, more applications. You have a remote workforce, all with new threats and regulations, make strong security extremely complex. Luckily, LastPass provides your IT with strong security that's easy to use and manage. Now, when LastPass surveyed global IT decision makers, 96% of organizations said the remote workforce was impacted and their identity and access management strategy impacted as well. Now, how can you manage identities and promote good security behaviors while your employees are remote? You can use LastPass. LastPass allows you to secure password stored, meaning give employees their own vault for securing and storing every app and web login that they use. Convenient password sharing. Think about that. A lot of services out there you need to access, teams need to access, right? Make it easy for employees to share those logins while keeping access to security and corporate data safe. Streamline logins, capture and fill every credential. Don't make them type it in without disruption. So the employee's workflow is a lot easier and smoother. Less impedance. A centralized control also enforces policies and can get actionable insights into employee password behavior, even from an admin dashboard. A simplified user management is also great. Instantly add and remove users or automate user management with directory integration, which helps a lot for IT organizations. Access from anywhere, no matter where your employees work, they always have their passwords with them from any device. Now, when user identities are central and securely managed, a business can ensure that the correct employee is doing the right thing and has the right access. They'll work more efficiently when the access and the data resources they need can be easy. LastPass's IAM solutions help businesses improve the employee experience and safeguard from cyber threats. Now, LastPass uses 256-bit encryption. That's the same AES encryption type that utilized by banks and militaries, so you know you're getting the most out of security. Of course, people always have their favorite tool, and mine is definitely LastPass. In fact, I use it so often, I don't even think about it anymore. I don't even know I'm using it anymore. I use it, username and password for every site, all my important sites, financial sites, business sites, even logging into things like AWS or Azure. I need to be able to log into these security services and these application services securely. Well, it's really hard to remember those passwords, so that's why I don't have to worry anymore. LastPass helps me. In fact, it's integrated with Active Directory for me, so not only I don't have to remember any other password but my AD password, my network login, and LastPass takes care of the rest. Let your remote workforce focus on their work without compromising your business security. Secure your remote workforce with LastPass. Go to lastpass.com/twit. That's lastpass.com/twit. And we thank LastPass for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring a guest to drop some knowledge on the Twilight Right. And today we have Raman Venkatraman, Vice President and Global Head of HiTech from TCS. Welcome to the show, Raman.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Now, Raman, our audience loves to hear people's journey through tech, their origin stories. Can you maybe take us on a short journey through tech and what brought you to TCS?
Well, yes, TCS has been my first job, and it's 27 years so far. I have a background in electrical communication engineering. I did masters and then directly joined TCS as a trainee, and have been traveling pretty much after that for the last 25 years or so in various countries. And I lived in Taiwan during the 1999 earthquake, the massive 107.1, right? I was there right at that point of time at Taipei. So I've lived in Germany, England, US earlier, Switzerland, Taiwan, and pretty much everywhere. So, and now for the last 20 years in the Bay Area.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for being here. Now, you are focusing on something very specific now. Now that you're at in the HiTech group, what has been your main focus, and what changes have you seen in that focus?
Yeah, I head the HiTech industry vertical in TCS. And the industry vertical comprises of essentially data center equipment providers and OEMs, industrial electronics, cloud and software companies, and the professional services and staffing companies. So it's a group of companies which provide products and services to multiple other verticals as well. So this is the group that I head now in TCS. I also have another responsibility, much larger corporate responsibility, which is I head all the alliances and technology organization. And which in fact is quite an interesting responsibility in the sense that other than focusing on HiTech as a set of customers for me, I also look at in terms of how their products and services gets adopted into various different industry verticals. So work very closely with them in doing go-to-market, creating solutions for multiple verticals and all those areas. So it's a kind of a interesting job juggling between these two roles.
Right. Now, we've talked about this a lot. We talked about COVID and pandemic and how it's affecting organizations. But what do you think? Is the remote work, will that become the new norm? Will it be kind of a perk for organizations going forward?
Yeah, see, within TCS, we announced saying that right at this point of time, we have more than 95 to 96% of people working from remote, not in any specific office. Wow. What we feel is we have articulated a new strategy called 25 by 25, which means that by 2025, we expect something like 25% of the people in our company working 25% of their time, 25% in the office. That's what we feel. We feel that the current mode of working, where everybody is working from remote, it will be, life will not come back to what it was a year before. So this will be more of a norm. But again, you need to take specific considerations of different customers in terms of their requirements, and it will be a collaborative way of working. But the mode will be completely different. It will go towards that. And some of the things that we have been discussing in this show earlier in terms of security is going to play a significant role in terms of how work is going to be executed. Security is going to be really, really paramount in terms of how it gets executed.
Right. That's interesting you brought up security, because I think obviously during the pandemic, security awareness, the network perimeters changed for a lot of organizations. What are you seeing organizations do to catch up here?
I have, believe me, in the last, I have last seen the plane, or I've got onto the plane in the month of March, right? After that, I've never been on a plane. For a person who has been something like 400 to 500,000 miles a year traveling, spending on planes. So this has been quite a different journey. But interestingly, from a work perspective, the work has increased tremendously. The number of customer interactions have increased tremendously, right? You are working more harder than what you were before. But to give an example, earlier, if you are going to meet a customer, right, in a specific location, customers are global. Their executives are there in different locations. So you meet them in different places. Today, this customer executive is same customer. Next week, a different executive, same customer in a different location. But at this point of time, you are meeting all of them together, and then focused conversations are happening. So from that perspective, there are a lot more interactions. There are a lot more productive conversations are happening at various areas. And this is happening at multiple customers as well. So everybody is very busy. People are accessing infrastructure, data, applications from different sets of locations to different sets of formats, right? Where VPN, VDI, all of those different things that you can think of. And the consistent message that I hear is there is no overinvestment on security at this point of time. You need to build applications right from top down, completely secure. You need to clearly evaluate in terms of how you are going to access those sets of applications. How do you make data secure? Essentially, it's a no trust kind of a policy has to be followed all across. So far, I think a journey has been there in terms of making it more secure in that direction. But I think there is a lot more work that need to be done globally from a security perspective at various areas. I think we clearly feel that PrivaSec DevOps is going to play a significant role, because how do you build applications, how do you access applications, and how do you bring security right at the when you're building the application, not just in terms of accessing it, is going to be really, really key in terms of how do you make it more secure.
Right, that makes sense. I think some of the interesting things I'm hearing is a lot of organizations think that, hey, we need to migrate a lot of our dependent services and applications to the cloud, because that'll at least allow us to scale them out. What about security? Are you seeing that organizations are then worried, oh, I'm moving to the cloud and now I'm going to be less secure, and so I need to be able to handle that as well? How is that related to a lot of the things you're seeing?
Very, very interesting question. If you had asked me this question 3 years before, I would have said there has been lots of apprehension for people to go on to cloud because of security. But actually, it is a reverse right now, because the amount of investment that a cloud provider has done, if you look at all the hyperscalers, I'm talking about the likes of AWS, Azure, GCP, and now IBM, right? IBM, I would not exactly put it as a hyperscaler unlike the other three, but all of them have invested so much on security that they are far ahead in terms of trying to make their applications more secure than anybody else. And then you have the large SaaS platforms today that are available. So compared to those sets of investments, an individual company that is having his own set of data center, own sets of applications, will never be able to invest so much on security as those people have done. Second is the kind of plug and play that you need to do, the kind of integration that you have to do with various softwares and all of those things together. It always opens up multiple sets of breach points in your enterprise. But if you are going to move to cloud and have a single cloud platform, and then there is a plug and play architecture where you're integrating with different SaaS platforms with a common data layer and all of those things together, surprisingly, I think that architecture is much more secure than what the current architecture would be as an on-prem architecture, because that's how the future is going to be. I clearly believe that. In fact, security should be the major driver to go onto the cloud now at this point of time.
That's true. That's true. Well, when we come back, we have a lot more to talk about here, and I do want to bring my co-host back in. But before we do that, I do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Salesforce Service Cloud. Talk about cloud. Now, you know I'm a CRM person. I love CRM, and I can tell you there's a reason why Salesforce Service Cloud is the world's #1 customer service platform. It really does empower organizations to deliver service from anywhere at any time. Now, Salesforce Service Cloud wants you to be prepared during these unknown times. They understand that you're trying to do more with less resources, hustling to adapt to new customer needs, and innovating your business to respond to the current environment. The goal here is you want to satisfy your customers. That's why you look for platforms that can easily meet their needs. Salesforce provides turnkey solutions. Plus, they also have out-of-the-box to fully customizable support. Customizations and platforms are near and dear to my heart, and Salesforce does it very, very well. And it really helps you find the best solution for your customers. Now, Service Cloud allows you to rapidly respond to customer needs and on any channel. Think about all the channels you have. You have chat, SMS, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and more, whether it's from home or in the field or at the office. Plus, you can provide instant support with self-service portals, connect customers to articles, account info, and community members to find answers instantly. Work smarter with built-in AI, embedded AI-powered chatbots to help resolve customer issues very quickly and give your service team the tools to provide an unforgettable customer experience. Resolve cases faster while using the suite of intelligent productivity tools, giving agents a complete shared view of every customer and every interaction. Utilizes the capability of personalizing every customer conversation and allow them to always respond with the right level of service. Built on a fast, flexible platform, Salesforce Service Cloud enables trailblazers to provide world-class service anytime, anywhere, whether it's messaging, chat, phone, self-service, or in person. Over 150,000 companies keep their customers happy with Salesforce. Provide your customer service agents with a fast and flexible service platform that keeps them and your customers happy. Go to bit.ly/Salesforce for service to find out how the world's #1 service platform can help grow your business. That's bit.ly/Salesforce for service. And we thank Salesforce Service Cloud for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we're talking with Raman. He's the Vice President Global Head at HiTech from TCS, and we're talking about the new norm. A lot about how transitioning cloud to cloud, about the new norm and how we have a large workforce and what's that meaning for organizations. But I do want to bring my co-host back in. I want to throw it to you first, Brian, because you've seen a lot of this transition from a lot of organizations as well.
Well, I want to leverage Raman's 400 to 500,000 miles a year experience. You're dealing with a lot of people from all around the world, and TCS is a global corporation. Are certain countries seemingly more agile than others dealing with this pandemic?
You asked a very difficult question there. But I think the way I would like to say is every country is different with their own sets of rules and regulations. And for us, it has been a different experience going through those different phases at different parts of time. So I think it has been a challenge in the sense that, the impact has been very different in different phases of time, right? Initially, it was in some sets of the countries. Afterwards, those stabilized, and then there are certain other countries we had certain interruptions, and now it's been changing from that perspective. I would not put it in such a category that some countries have been more agile or some countries have been less agile. It has been, I would say, it has been like that all across. Every country has been very different in terms of how they have reacted to it.
A very diplomatic answer. Well, I'll tell you, the show, obviously we're based in the United States, and but I like to rise to the top certain attitudes that America isn't always the best at everything. And there's some really interesting things that are happening in the UK, especially on the ways corporations are forcing their employees to start thinking about security and remote access. I've also been hearing a lot of interesting things out of Singapore. Have you been hearing any kind of interesting things about countries or maybe large corporations that are trying to get the people in the trenches thinking more about security and remote access?
No, as I said, today everyone is thinking about security. There are two statements that I always hear. One is there is no overinvestment on security at this point of time. That is the first thing, right? And second thing is security is never an afterthought. It used to be an afterthought earlier. It is not an afterthought at this point of time. So from that perspective, security is always at the back of mind in terms of whatever you do, however you do. And whenever you try to access an application or what kind of applications you are accessing, what kind of data that you are accessing, security is right and key and center in the middle of it at all times.
So, Raman, one question I had for you is, kind of a shift a little bit. A lot of organizations are obviously moving to the cloud now that they have a remote workforce. You have this digital workplace that they need to have, but sometimes they depend on applications that don't necessarily have SaaS equivalents. So what are you seeing organizations do in that aspect? How are they still taking advantage of those applications, or do they have to just throw them away?
See, at this point of time, when I look at it, the first thing that has happened here is in a cloud and software kind of scenario, is the impact on the set of applications that an employee or a customer normally accesses, which are the productivity and the collaborative set of applications, right, which drive a significant amount of experience. With employees demanding more and more consumer-grade experience, as we call, and you need mass personalization in the sense that every employee needs to be treated as a unique customer or a unique employee with their own sets of things that the company need to know about. There are two parameters that definitely comes in. One is, what does know your employee mean? Because you always talked about in terms of what is knowing your customer, right? Now it is about knowing your employee. And second is, if you are able to know your employee, then you are able to give that experience. And knowing your employee means it is not just culture, but it is also about their talent, how you can deploy their talent in the right way, their aspirations, their career growth path, their mentorship, and then their content and learning management. If you look at all these different aspects of it, each of them can be taken as a SaaS function. In terms of how you're going to provide that kind of experiences, and many of them would be on the cloud. So those set of applications, if they are already on as an on-prem or a different kind of an application, you would want to move them either a lift shift or you want to re-engineer them from a cloud perspective. So these are things that you would do. And within the company, there are other sets of applications. If you remove the employee or the talent part of it, there are significantly lots of other applications that are there within the enterprise. The initial set of applications that has always been from a cloud perspective have been your financials, your HR, and all those things, sales, and all of that, right? Which are the way the traditional SaaS functions, SaaS companies build those functions. Now there are specific parts of it like compensation management, there is learning management. There are all those other aspects that is coming in. So you would have to move each of those different functions, whichever is not cloud amenable at this point of time. You would need to work on them. You would need to see whether it needs re-engineering, or you just need to adapt some new sets of functions, and that includes supply chain, each of those different facets of it. I believe that the future of enterprise architecture will be hybrid cloud platform. You will have different sets of cloud plays based on characteristics of workloads, on which you have different SaaS, enterprise SaaS functions being loosely integrated. When I talk about loosely integrated, it is about a set of APIs, and where data will be the integration layer in terms of how does the data flow, and what are you going to do with the data, who is going to access that particular data, what are you going to do about it, how it is going to be visualized. That kind of architecture is going to come. The key for that, the reason for that is because unless enterprises are able to build such kind of an architecture, you will not be able to sense and respond to an external situation just as you have today, right? If you have to sense and respond much better in the future, you need to have a loosely coupled but a fantastic architecture where data can flow in and you are able to see the changes that is happening and you're able to also tweak the systems as you want. I think that's how the future is going to be.
Well, in your last answer and in a couple of the things you've talked about, you've mentioned the culture of the company. And one of the things that I'm interested in, there has always been a difference between sort of the political access of those working in the office and those relatively few employees who work remotely. Now, with more and more employees working remotely, do you think that there are some technology assists that can help bridge that political and cultural gap between those who might still be in an office and the much larger number who are going to be working remotely?
This is a fantastic question. Seriously, I didn't expect this, but let me answer it this way. One of the biggest learnings that we have in the last 6 months is what I call is a democratization of conversation in a meeting. Earlier, whenever you had a meeting, a global meeting, there are people who are there in the room and there are people who participate over a call. And you always have sidebar conversations, right? People in the call always feel left out because there are people in the conference room who are discussing certain different things and might be certain things of importance when you are muted and all of those things that are happening. But the biggest change that I see happening right now is a breakdown of complete hierarchies, which means that everybody is on the call. People are connecting from wherever they are through whatever devices. It makes conversation that much more enriching. It means that people have an equal opportunity to contribute wherever they are, whoever they are. And that brings in a different paradigm in communication, what you call as a complete cultural difference that is happening in various conversations. And that I think that is big. People have learned it. And I don't think nobody will ever go back to a different set of system whereby you are going to have two different conversations in a single meeting. That is extremely important. What that has also meant is the proliferation or rather the enrichment of technologies to be able to exactly help in terms of collaboration. What does it mean in terms of collaboration? Is it just a use of systems in terms of voice and video? Or do you have other sets of tools whereby you can also communicate very openly in terms of the document sharing or pictures or collaborative in various other forms? All of those things are becoming increasingly important. I think from a future perspective, I clearly see as a biggest thing in terms of what is happening, and that is going to stay. So,
Raman, thank you so much for being here. We're running a little bit low on time. I did want to give you a chance to tell the folks at home where they can go to learn more about all of this and, of course, learn more about TCS.
I'm sorry? We're
running low on time. I just wanted to give you a chance to maybe tell the folks at home where they can go and learn more about TCS.
Yeah, tcs.com, our website, www.tcs.com. You can always get lots of information from the website, and there are white papers on each of the different scenarios, and you can hear and see on our offerings for multiple verticals in terms of what we are delivering to various customers, challenges, the things that we are doing. Everything you can see that from the website.
Fantastic. Thanks again for being here. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the Best Dang Enterprise podcast in the universe, so tune your device to try it. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my team, my co-host, Song with Our Geek in Paradise, Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what's going on for you in the coming week, and where can people find you online?
I am at Twitter, ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab, or more. Actually, I've been getting deluged by emails from people around the world asking about different things. That's what actually drove today's international question. We had some folks from the UK and from, I think, France that threw some questions at us. Anyway, I am Cheebert at twit.tv, spelled CheeBert. Or better yet, why don't you send email to Twiet at twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. I am going to be kind of off the air for the next couple of days. My parking pass at the University of Hawaii dies this Sunday, so I've got to finish getting my lab cleaned out. But starting next week, I'll be able to catch up on the emails from you, and I love to hear from the Twiet Riot.
Thanks, Cheebert. Well, we also thank Mr. Curtis Franklin, senior editor over there at Dark Reading. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming week, and where can people find you?
Well, as always, you can find my writing and pretty much everything that I'm doing at Dark Reading, and especially at the edge of Dark Reading. I've got something I'm writing up this week. I took part in a simulated test of election security systems. I'm in the process of writing that up. Very interesting things. There were about 50 participants from government at all levels, as well as some industry. Interesting stuff going on in the way that the various law enforcement and security agencies are thinking about the election that's coming up. As always, follow me and learn when I'm posting articles on Twitter at KG4GWA. I'm also on Instagram at Curt_Franklin. Thanks so much. I look forward to hearing from all the members of the Twiet Riot.
Thank you, Curtis. Well, folks, of course, we have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and listen to our show to get your enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen and catch up on your enterprise news and your IT news. Go to our show page right now, twit.tv/Twiet. There you'll find all of our amazing back episodes, show notes, co-host information, guest information, and the links to the stories we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll get those helpful download or subscribe links. Actually support the show by getting a audio version, video version of your choice, and listen on any one of your devices or on any one of your podcast applications, Podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whichever one you use. We're on all of them, so definitely go ahead and subscribe. That's the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news. Plus, the best way to support the show as well. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your friends, your family members, and your coworkers with giving the gift of Twiet. We talk about some fun tech subjects, and I can tell you, and I can guarantee they'll find them interesting to you. And if not, reach out to me at twit.tv or over at twit.community website, or even on Twitter at LouMM, and we can discuss about making it more interesting for you. Now, if you've already subscribed and you're available these days live, 1:30 p.m. Pacific on Fridays, we do the show live at live.twit.tv. Come see how the pizza's made. Come see behind the scenes. Come see all the banter that we do here at Twit. And of course, plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well, because we have a really great set of characters in there. irc.twit.tv. We love the chat room. We have great discussions there. So please, maybe even come give feedback in the irc.twit.tv if you're available. Now, if you can't watch the show live, but you still want to be part of the amazing community, like I mentioned before, come join the 24/7 discussion over at the new twit.community website. We have a really great set of discussions out there about technology with the co-hosts, with all the guests, sometimes even with Leo. We have some great discussions with him, of course, out there. So go check that out at twit.community. And remember, you can always follow me at twitter.com/LouMM. There I post all my latest and greatest enterprise tidbits. Of course, have great conversations like you and get some good ideas for new shows. So definitely catch me on there. And of course, if you want to check out developers.microsoft.com/office, there you'll get to see what I do during my normal day job at Microsoft and the latest, greatest ways to customize Office for your organization. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leah and Lou. They continue to support us each and every week, and we really couldn't do the show without them. So thank you for all the support. Of course, thank you to all the engineers at Twit, and of course the staff. And of course, thank you to Mr. Brian Chee one more time. Cheebert is not only our tireless producer, he's also our co-host. He does kind of a dual role here, and he does all the bookings and the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do this show without him. So thanks again, Cheebert, for all your support. And before we sign out, we have to thank Victor, our editor, but of course, our TD for today, Jeff. He keeps the show smooth as butter. Jeff, thanks for all your support, and I hope everything's going well over there at Twit.
Everything's going great. I'm still here, and that's always a good thing. And we got a lot of fires burning around us right now in California, so it's really smoky here today. Hopefully they're not getting too close, but we do have a plan. We will keep Twit going if something happens.
I like that stability. I like the stability. Well, thanks, Jeff. And until next time, I'm Lou MARESCA, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, host at Twit TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. This is my show, Hands On Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.